Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a makeup tag, and we're talking about eyeshadow palettes again, and that is what gives me joy. Today I am going to do the eyeshadow palette collection tag by Angelica Lirmar. Lirmar? I'm not sure. I saw this from Mel Thompson, and I will be linking the two videos down in the description box if you're interested in doing the tag as well. There's going to be also all the questions in there. The idea of the tag is that all the prompts start if I would pick a eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents, and then there's different questions and different things that these palettes represent. And I actually had a bit of a hard time picking out things, and that was interesting to see actually. So I hope you enjoy the video. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing to my channel, and let's get on to the first question. So the first one is, if I would pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents me in terms of color story, which one would it be? And I think that the most Alice palette in my collection is the Gemini palette. And I mention this all the time. I even have actually, every time I open it, I remember, I actually modified the color story a little bit. So it's me, but not completely. And you know that I love single eyeshadow. So there's much more me in my build your own palettes. And I do these videos almost monthly. So those are more me than the pre-made palettes, but there's a lot of me palettes in my pre-made palettes, if that makes any sense. So the most Alice color story is probably Gemini. There's the yellows, there's the brown, warm browns, and there's the green, grungy greens. These are shades that I know my friends associate with me. If I see online like, oh, this is really an Alice color story, I'm like, I know. And I end up buying all of those palettes too. But this one is the one, and also the one that I'm so happy to have purchased in the end, even though I skipped the first release, which was better because the formula improved after the first batch. Anyways, this is the most me color story in a palette. Since I can't just pick one eyeshadow for the first prompt, I'm gonna go with a runner-up, and that is the Raw Beauty Kristi and Colourpop palette. I mean, this is very me because there's the yellows and there's the teal and the forest greens and the warm browns. Very, very me. I could probably switch out these two a little bit more and put in some, I don't know, other shimmers. I would, but for the rest, I think this one is also very, very close second for an Alice color story, and that was why I went out of my way to get this palette, because I thought it was definitely something that represented me as in a color story. The second question is the palette that represents me the most in terms of packaging, and I had a bit of a hard time choosing because there's two that do represent me in terms of packaging, and one is the green palette from Glam Shop. There's Monsteras on the palette. There's Monsteras on the palette. I have a giant Monstera in my bedroom. I have plants all over the house. There's a Monstera on the palette. This is the most Alice palette that I have. However, I also really like the Rust palette packaging. It really resonates to me with the gold and the warm tone. So it's like a close second, but I think maybe the Monstera is the closest thing. Could be. This is a close second. The third question is to pick a palette that represents spring. The tag was created end of March and we're now not in spring anymore. So I'm going to share a palette that represented spring for me a lot this year, and that's the Colourpop and the Mandalorian palette and the Child actually palette. And the reason is this spring I was really obsessed with like these sage greens, and this color story worked really well. I used this palette much more than I expected, much more than any of my other, like even of the Raw Beauty Kristi palette. I loved this and I still love it and I use it a lot. So this one is my spring palette. But since we are in summer now, actually, I will share the palette that represents summer for me, and that is the Natasha Denona bronze palette. This one here is actually like the holiday, the beach, the bronzy look type of eyeshadow palette. Really like this, and I'm actually thinking of just going with this one on holiday. For now, this is my summer palette, the one that represents summer the most. Next up, number 4 is pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents happy. And I picked the Citrinada palette by Glam Shop. It also represents summer for me because I wear a lot of yellow in summer, but this just gives me happy vibes, and it's just bright and happy. Yellow gives me happy, and eyeshadow looks with yellow tell me I'm happy, and this is the eyeshadow palette that represents happy for me. Beautiful textures, all shades of yellow, and I've found myself using this one also as a companion palette to other palettes from Glam Shop recently, and yeah, just really love yellows, so they make me happy. Next question is if I could pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents the dark and grungy in me. Now, you know that there's very little things that are more grungy or dark than my usual, in the sense this is a very me eyeshadow look, and for some people this would be very grungy and dark, but this is a very just normal everyday for me. Maybe, no, I was gonna say maybe a bit dark for everyday. No, it's fine. But the grungy palette is, for me, is definitely Gemini. And the reason is that there's these shades that are very grungy. It's like dirty shades. The greens, the neutrals, they're just dirty neutrals, let's say. However, to pick one palette for the more dark and grungy version of me, I would probably go with Melt Rust. I was thinking of picking Gemini because that's a very grungy palette, but this is darker and deeper. Like there's quite a heavy emphasis on deeper tones, also in the shimmers, and I usually end up doing quite dark makeup looks when I wear this. So this is my grungy dark side, I guess. Then again, the Get Ready With Me for this look will have gone up on my channel already, so you can go and check that out. But yeah, this is also kind of grungy for most people. On the opposite spectrum, if I could pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents the girly in me, that was very hard. But I actually found one that is the girliest palette that I have, and that is Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2. It's pink, right? I mean, there's pinks, it's girly, I guess. But this one gives me the spring vibes, give me the corally pinks and these beautiful shimmers. I guess this is my girly palette. Mainly because there's pinks, I guess. I'm not a girly person. I don't really do a lot of girly eyeshadow looks. And also then, what does girly mean? Is it pink or is it delicate? I don't know, but I picked the Divine Rose 2 palette, different called Prompt. Not really applicable because I don't feel girly. Next up is a palette that represents fun, and I picked the green palette from Glam Shop again because, I mean, it's so much fun. Look at that shade. It's so much fun, and all of these different texture-y, different toned greens. This is really a fun palette. I really enjoy it. You have like the grassy greens, you have the more like goldy greens, the more teal. I really like this palette. I actually should use it a bit more often. It kind of sits on my desk and I forget about it, but this is a fun palette. Absolutely. I really like it, and it's mainly the neon that brings the fun in the game. And the final question is if I would pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents inspiration. And I have to say, there has been a time in my makeup life, we're talking 2017, in which I really found inspiration again after not having pre-made palettes for a long time, and that was Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture. that was really, it's like it's a moment imprinted in my memory in which I remember, oh, I felt inspired by that palette. I wasn't interested in pre-made palettes for a long time. I pretty much decluttered all of the ones I had, and that triggered me again on it, and I felt really inspired. But I don't have that palette anymore. It was at the time quite innovative and an interesting color story. Nowadays you can see there's a lot of things that are just as interesting. But the other palette that I feel quite inspired by is the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. This one is, it's so much fun. There is a lot of different possibilities here, and it is inspiring because if you look at quads and you look at, oh, what am I gonna wear? The other day I was like, oh, I have some green in my shirt. I'm gonna wear the green in my crease, and then I was like, okay, what can I look? I don't want to go with the gold as usual. What can I put next to the green? And I just looked around the shade, and the way this has been put together is that you can actually kind of mix and match and go around in quads or get inspiration by the setting of the palette. So I went in with this coppery, red coppery shade, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked it, and yeah, this one is my inspiration palette, and I just love it. I just love it. I wish Natasha Denona brought out another one of these formats, even though I like the bronze palette format. Anyways, here is the tag. I would love to hear your answers to the questions either in the comments, or if you have a channel to do this tag as well. As usual, I am tagging Mariam and Meg to do this. I love hearing their answers to it, but I would love to see also a few of my friends on Instagram do them on their IGTV or something. So I'll leave all the questions and the prompts down below, as well as the original creator of the tag, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.